There's one goal here, and one promise I made to Mrs. Ford is winning. For that to happen, everyone needs to be on the same page to be in the best position with the right plan. Every person in this building has a job to do, and each job is important. If we can get one step better every day, that's putting this organization in the right direction.
Donald steps up in the pocket, now throws. It is picked up by Rice. Comes back right side. Inside the 10. It is Quandre Diggs to the 5. To the house. Touchdown to Detroit Lions. How about that for an opening end?
Oh, my God. It is Sir Mix-a-Lot booty thick.
And we're back live at the Senior Bowl 2020 at the Renaissance Plaza Hotel in Mobile, Alabama. We are here with Dan Hope from 11 Warriors. Dan, how you doing today, man? Great to have you.
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good, yeah. Dan knows Ohio State very, very well. He's covered them for a long time. With a brief intermission covering Clemson, you cover winners, my friend. I'm as Lions fans, we're very envious of that. Let's talk a little bit about one of the guys who isn't here first, because he's of great importance to the Detroit Lions. A lot of people think that Jeff Okudah is going to be the number 3 pick or should be in play for the number 3 pick. Tell me about what you've seen from him and how he compares kind of over the years to some of the other Buckeye cornerbacks that have been out there.
Well, I think he's as good as any one of them. He's an excellent player, just coming off a really dominant junior season, bringing in Jeff Hafley last year to coach him, getting that NFL experience from a guy who had been an NFL secondary coach. I think that really took Jeff Okudah from being a very good player to a great player, just taking him to that next level. I think he was the best cornerback in college football last year. He's got great size. He's got great athleticism. I think he's really got all the tools that NFL teams are looking for in a cornerback prospect. And I think he might be even better than Marshawn Lattimore and Denzel Ward coming out of Ohio State with just how consistent he is, both in coverage and coming up in run support.
So you don't think he's a reach at 3?
I don't. No, I don't. I think he's right up there with the top prospects in the draft. I'm not just saying that because I cover Ohio State. I think he's an elite cornerback who I think is going to be a great player in the NFL for a long time.
If Chase Young was available at 3, would you take him over Okudah?
Yeah,
Let's 8 guys here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Chase Young is pretty much, if you're not taking a quarterback, he's the guy you got to take in this draft because he's just such a rare prospect, such a freak. I think even compared to the Bosa's coming out of Ohio State, I think he's on another level just in terms of his athleticism and just his explosiveness.
Yeah. You've seen it. You watch them practice. You're there. You're a beat writer for them. You're there every day. Mm-hmm. What are his practice habits? Is he a guy who's getting after it all the time? You know. Or is he somebody who realizes that he's really good and kind of sort of coasts? Because we've seen guys like that before.
I think he's very much in the first category, a guy who you talk to his coaches, you talk to his teammates, they always think really highly of him. Even this past year when he had to deal with the suspension, he wasn't able to play for a couple weeks, they said even then he was the same guy every day, coming, working hard, showing up, trying to help his teammates get better. So you don't get a sense of entitlement with Chase. You get a sense of a guy who is working really hard and is worked really hard at his craft, and it certainly helped him, I think, having a coach like Larry Johnson, who's produced so many NFL defensive linemen, who's been able to refine his craft, refine his technique over the last few years.
So for the guys, the folks that don't know, so you have Chase Young here, and you had Bosa there for a long time as well. You've seen them both work. Let me ask you to put a kind of your comparison glasses on year over year. When you look at Bosa versus Young, who's your guy if they're sitting side by side today, and you're a GM waiting to pick?
I think Chase Young has the higher ceiling, and that's saying a lot because Nick Bosa's already doing.
Sure. Wow, look what he did last weekend.
Great things in the NFL, but I think Chase, just his explosiveness, it's truly rare. You just don't see a lot of guys with his size, his length, his burst off the ball. I think he's truly in a rare category in that area. I think Nick and his brother Joey were both a little bit more advanced technically. Those guys are so good with their hands and they're so strong. I think that's an area where Chase can still get a little better. So it's possible that maybe Chase takes a little longer to come along in the NFL than Nick did, just because Nick was so advanced technically. But at the same time, I think Chase just has such rare physical attributes that it's easy to see him being a star from day one.
All right, so he did not finish the year with great statistical numbers at the end of the season. I was at the Michigan game. I saw it. He was getting hit a lot. Offenses adjusted to him, did they not, and try to take him away?
Absolutely. We saw that specifically in the last 3 games of the year. Michigan really started that, and then Wisconsin and Clemson did it as well, where he was getting constantly double-teamed, triple-teamed, chip blocks, all of that. But you can see if you watch the game, if you watch the film, he's still making an impact on a lot of different plays. He's not necessarily getting the sacks because of the emphasis that offenses were putting on him, but he's still bringing pressure. He's still freeing up guys around him to make plays, and that's going to happen when you have the kind of stats like he did against Wisconsin and Penn State. Eventually, teams are going to start to lock in on you and say, we'll let somebody else beat us, but not you.
Yeah. So one of those guys who wants to beat one of the other guys is Malik Harrison. He is here. I don't think a lot of people outside of Columbus really know a lot about Malik Harrison. Talk to me a little bit about what he offers.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a bit of an overlooked guy. I think he's a guy who never really got the attention that maybe he deserves in his Ohio State career. And I think a big reason for that was Chase Young, was some of the other stars in that defense. But you look at the physical attributes. He weighed in yesterday at 246 pounds, almost 6'3". He's built almost like a defensive end, but he's also a really good athlete, a guy who showed that ability to play sideline to sideline at Ohio State, drop into coverage, can rush as well. So I think he's a versatile guy. I think he's a guy that in a free four, he could potentially play either outside or inside. I think he could probably play multiple positions in any defense. So I think he's a guy that's got some good tools. I don't think he's quite on that Ryan Shazier level, that Darren Lee level as a prospect.
Yeah.
But he's a guy I look at probably like a third-round pick. I think he's a guy who could be a good value on day 2 and probably be a solid starting linebacker in the NFL.
Sounds like Devon Canard, does it not?
A little bit. Let me move on to another guy. And I had a massive love affair last year with Terry McLaurin. He showed up and he just blew me away with everything he did out on the field in practice, other than the rained out periods. He looked absolutely fabulous. And I'm starting to feel a little tingle again this year with KJ Hill. Oh my gosh. He looked spectacular out there. The route running that he had, I mean, he left guys, the phrase I used earlier, I stole from a local Detroit hockey announcer. A lot of guys left their jocks on the clock out there, right? I mean, just blew them out of their shoes. Tell us a little bit about him. Where's this guy coming from, and where do you think he's going?
Yeah, well, he's a guy who spent 5 years at Ohio State. He's actually the all-time leader in Ohio State history in career reception. So there's a lot of good receivers to come through Ohio State. So
that's surprising. I mean, that's Chris Carter. That's
David Boston.
Terry Glenn.
Yeah, it's a pretty good record to have. So he was super consistent in his Ohio State career. He actually also tied the record with 48 straight games of a catch. So that's what you're getting with KJ. You're getting consistency. Great route runner, which I think we saw yesterday in the practices. Really consistent hands. The knocks on him are going to be he doesn't have elite size. He doesn't have that elite speed necessarily, but he's got that quickness. He's got that route running ability. He might be a guy that's kind of limited to the slot in the NFL, but he's got a good skill set. I think he's a guy who can get on a roster and is probably going to hang around for a while. Mm-hmm. And he's also a really good young man. Was a team captain last year, a guy who his players and coaches really like, and I think will bring those qualities to a locker room as well, much like Terry McLaurin.
I think, if I look at the way he moves, it reminds me in an odd way of like a Golden Tate. A guy like this, especially out of the slot, could provide a real target for Matthew Stafford that we saw with Danny Amendola, or it's not even the corpse of Danny Amendola. He was just old, but he played great. He could really provide a great target.
The thing that I noticed yesterday about him was his feet off his release. They're perfect every time. He's been very well schooled. He clearly studies his own craft. He knows what he needs to get better at. I think you saw that even just in one practice today. This is a guy who's like, okay, the coach told me that I needed to do this. On the next rep, he did it. Instant implementation. That you don't see that a lot with a lot of the guys here.
Well, I think when you see what Terry McLaurin did last year, you see what KJ Hill's doing so far this year, got to give a lot of credit back to Brian Hartline at Ohio State. I think
another good receiver for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I think what he's come in and done there the last couple years, taking over that wide receiver room, bringing that NFL experience, I think these guys have gotten so much more polished as receivers, and we've seen it. We even saw it with Ben Victor last week at the Shrine Bowl.
That's right.
These guys are coming in and they're really standing out at these All-Star games, and a lot of that goes back to the coaching they're getting at Ohio State.
Wow, and Mack's here too, is he not?
Yeah, Austin Mack as well.
What he's more of like a special teamer, bottom of the roster guy is what I peg him for anyways.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that I think never kind of broke out the way that people thought he would at Ohio State, where he was coming in and people were saying, oh, he could be the next Michael Thomas, and it just never really happened. He had some injuries, had some inconsistency. There were times he made some great circus catches. There were times that he flashed. He's got good size, pretty good athleticism. But we just never really saw him really take that next step and become that elite receiver. So I think he's got some NFL potential. I think he's probably a late round guy, though. Probably a guy who really needs a good week here, I think, to get his stock moving up.
Sure. Nice. Now, I chased him away. See what I said there? With Chase Young. I chased him off of Jeff Okudah. Give us a little bit more on him. He's a guy. How do you think he's going to look? Cornerbacks typically take a lot of time to develop over the first couple years of an NFL career, right? They never really come in quite game ready to kind of take on the NFL wide receiver. What's the learning curve for Okudah? I mean, does he come in year one? Is he one of those special guys that can do that, or do you think it's going to take time for him to grow and kind of fit the spot?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's always going to be a learning curve. I think that's one of those positions that's always tough to project. But I think Okudah, the fact that he was coached by Jeff Hafley last year, a guy who's been in the NFL, I think we saw him really take those steps, become a more technical, sound player where I think he's going to have a chance to compete for a starting job and really have a chance to contribute right away in year one. I'm sure there'll be some bumps in the roads just like there are for all of them, but again, you look at those guys that have come out of Ohio State. Denzel Ward was a Pro Bowler as a rookie. Marshawn Lattimore, I believe, was a Pro Bowler as a rookie. So we've seen these guys the last few years come out of Ohio State. Those guys were actually coached by Kerry Combs, who now just went back to Ohio State. But I think Jeff Hafley's given some of the same tools to Jeff Okudah where he's going to have a chance to come in and contribute right away.
Wow. That's good stuff, Dan. One other question I got to ask J.K. Dobbins. He's not here, but running back wise, you've seen a ton of running backs, and I know we've talked running backs in the past. Evaluate him in where he fits in the NFL. Is he the top prospect in this class? Is he in that conversation? And what's he going to do in the NFL?
I think he's in that conversation, and I think this last year really put him in that conversation. I think going into this last year, he had kind of come off a disappointing 2018 season. I was a little bit unsure if he was more of that, second, third round type. I think he put himself into that first round conversation this past year. Broke Ohio State's single season record for rushing yards. Really showed more explosiveness, more decisiveness as a runner than I think we had seen in past years. And I think he's a very well-rounded back. He's tough. He's got good size. He's got good strength. He's got really good vision. Showed good patience behind the line this year. Probably get a little better as a receiver. I think that might be a weakness of his game going forward to the NFL. But I think he's a well-rounded runner, and he's a guy that proved this year he could carry the load if you need him to.
Yeah, the vision and the balance really stood out for me as something that improved, and it reminds me some of Kareem Hunt, who's a guy who's going to be available as well. But I'm very excited to see what happens with him. It's going to be a fun trip. You get to cover all these guys every year. My goodness. So you covered Clemson for a couple of years, and you did cover their first title, right?
I did.
Wow. I'm just in awe, man.
Some guys get
so jealous.
Do you think he brings the luck with him, or do you think it
Maybe
follows him where he goes?
So Dan and I used to work together many years ago on the Draft Network sites many years ago. So seeing him get to cover winners, I'm covering Detroit and Cleveland. I'm a little envious, my friend.
Yeah, it's been a good run. I'm sure one of these days I will have to learn how to cover a not winning team, but I've been lucky so far.
Well, you could come to Michigan.
Yeah, there's plenty of opportunity there.
Sorry, folks.
Ohio State fans like hearing that, though.
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, Dan. We grabbed you kind of on your way to lunch and everything, so we appreciate your time. Thanks
so much for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. We'll be back with more from the Senior Bowl Live 2020.
Dude, thanks.